Thank you for joining the Asheville Rise Stronger Together podcast. This is your host, Jessica Knupp with the Asheville Area Chamber of Commerce. I hope you enjoy today's episode. This episode is brought to you by our sponsor, TruePoint Bank. All right, thank you for joining us today. We are here with Aaron Slate with Truist. He is the market president. And we are so glad that you were able to join us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jessica. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, I know that obviously our community has been through so much with Hurricane Helene. And I know you guys have been very active in the community. And we're just kind of here today to kind of hear what you guys went through as an organization here, and kind of just talk through that and see what you guys have going on.
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for having me today. And thinking about back to Helene, September 27th, 2024, it's a date a lot of us will remember that went through it. And yeah, there were a lot of challenges a lot of folks went through.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for Truist, we are a bank located in Western North Carolina, headquartered in Charlotte. And we had a lot of employees that were impacted by Truist as well as our branches. And so thinking about a little over a year ago, the first thing from a challenges perspective, there were really kind of three challenges. One, making sure our teammates were okay.
Right.
What immediate needs did they have? And as you know, it took a couple days for a lot of folks to be able to just reach each other. So those first couple days was tricky. The second part was just, we had a lot of branches in the area. And so like any business, no power, no internet, no water, we couldn't reopen our branches. And the thing a lot of folks, I think, forget about when it happened was that Monday, the 30th, was payday for most folks. And so suddenly, we had folks reaching out that, they couldn't get power or internet. So they were concerned about, did they have funds in their bank account? Mm-hmm. They couldn't transfer funds in their bank account. They couldn't go to the ATM to get cash because there was no power.
Right.
They couldn't go to the stores to get cash out because the stores weren't accepting cards in those first couple of days because they lost power. And so initially it was just making sure folks were getting paid, had access to their paycheck. They didn't have to worry about that with everything else going on.
Right.
And then as a bank, we have a branch on Tunnel Road by the Veterans Restoration Quarters that was totally flooded. Swanee River right behind it, water all the way to the ceiling in there. And so accessing the damage to that branch and then working on getting a temporary mobile branch and ATM on site, that was the third thing that we were spending time doing on. So it was an interesting time because people don't think about payday until you're ready to get paid.
Right.
And it was
it
that
just
Monday.
automatically happens.
You're right. And you're like, well,
For
crap, like Helene just happened and I'm supposed to get paid on Monday. How's that gonna happen?
Right.
So
and
really
I might have to pay my rent or my mortgage next, and then I need that money in that account. So
and no one up here had access, and so the challenge was we were having to work, when we started getting power back and internet, just being able to access the internet and things that you take for granted on your phone and communicate with folks like, yep, the money's there, let's transfer funds, or here's where you can go to get cash. It was different from a bank perspective, realizing we still had clients that were impacted. So that was just very interesting for a lot of folks. Yeah.
So you said you had like a mobile, like ATM, like how did that?
Yeah, so Truist is a large bank. We're in 17 states in the Southeast, headquartered in Charlotte. And we're in Florida, a lot of branches in Florida. Florida obviously gets impacted by hurricanes pretty regularly. And so, we were able to mobilize, throughout the bank, kind of our network of partners to be able to bring a mobile ATM up into Asheville, be able to bring a mobile branch up to Asheville. It's still there today.
Yeah.
Still haven't been able to get the branch reopened. And, that was part of recovery. And recovery looked different for a lot of folks. And, for Truist, recovery was also very unique, and we'll get into that, kind of what that looked like for us. But mobile ATMs, mobile branches, that was something that you don't think about until you need it.
Right.
So it was nice to be able to say, all right, we can have a mobile ATM in the parking lot there within days, and people could access cash.
Right.
Then it was just getting more cash into the ATMs.
Right. Getting the cashier, because it was very difficult to get
Absolutely.
into our area.
There's only about one way in and out.
Yeah.
And, when you're used to using a card for everything, cash suddenly was in demand.
Yeah.
So it was a different time for folks.
It was. I mean, I know we sat in line for quite a while to get some cash because we were not prepared.
I don't carry cash, and I'm a banker. Yeah, I just don't carry cash. And my wife carries cash. Thankfully, she did.
Mm-hmm.
But we're a society that's used to technology, and
Mm-hmm.
technology you can pay with your phone, pay with your card, and so when things don't work, that system went down.
Right.
Yeah.
All of us. Well, how, like, from an employee perspective, like, how are you guys able to, with all the branches that you have here, like, what did the outreach for that look like?
Yeah, so recovery, looked for Truist a couple different ways, and for our employees, when I think about it, so the storm hit on Friday. Monday we got with our team in Charlotte and said, hey, we need to respond quickly,
Mm-hmm.
and not only support our teammates, support our community, support our clients. We felt like it was a real opportunity to live out our purpose as a bank, which is to inspire and build better lives and communities.
Mm-hmm.
We've been in Western North Carolina for decades, also the oldest bank in Western North Carolina and North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
So we felt like, hey, this is a top priority for us. So the bank did three things in the recovery process. The first thing was immediate needs for employees, our teammates, and folks in the community. So within days, we had deployed food, bottled water, supplies to our local branches, which are distributed to members of the community.
Mm-hmm.
I know you saw a lot of that in the first weeks, just
Right.
stuff coming in the area, and folks needed it desperately. Fortunately, we also had our CEO, Bill Rogers, visit Asheville that first week to help out with that as well.
Nice.
Secondly, within 2 weeks, we established what we called a community care center, or West Asheville branch. We started seeing a lot of these pop up within a couple weeks of the storm. And what that looked like, our branch is right on Haywood Road, but it was free for the community to use for 21 days. It provided free hot shower facilities, it provided free bathrooms, it provided free laundry facilities. So folks literally could come down to the branch, they could do a load of laundry, wash and dry. We had all the detergent, all the laundry stuff. They could take a hot shower, they could go to the bathroom, have some privacy, and that was just something for a lot of folks. They didn't have that. We didn't have hot water, that's for sure, if you're in the city. And then a lot of people didn't have power, so being able to just have some clean clothes, get a shower, and for a lot of folks, I think, if you had children at the time, which we did, they were out of school.
Right.
So you're trying to manage, what
All
are
of
we
it.
doing with the kids, with this, and things you take for granted. And for a lot of folks, that hot shower, wash and dry your clothes meant a lot. And so those community care stations, in my opinion, it filled a gap for folks that didn't have those services yet, and just couldn't access it at their homes at the time. And then the third kind of part of recovery we saw was long-term recovery for the community. So Truist came out with a program called Truist Cares for Western North Carolina. So that was it's a 3-year, $725 million program commitment for Western North Carolina. So supports small business, supports housing, supports infrastructure. We committed to $25 million in philanthropic grants to nonprofits here in Western North Carolina.
Wonderful.
We've already had $15 million of that distributed out in the community already, which is a huge deal.
That's amazing.
And then 10,000 volunteer hours for our Truist teammates, because we knew, money's going to help, but also there's a lot of nonprofits and folks who just need boots on the ground. And so that's something that we felt like was important, and not just do it, initially, but do it over a 3-year period, because a lot of disasters, you see a lot of money will come in, a lot of help will come in, and then you kind of get forgotten about a lot of times.
Right.
So, we're coming up on the first year since we came out with the initiative, and it's been tremendous for small businesses, for community partners, for nonprofits, just to know, hey, we've got some needs coming up. They can reach out to us and we can partner with them. So that feels good to have those resources and be able to give back for communities that we live in.
Right.
And we raise our kids in. This means a lot to us.
It does.
Yeah.
Well, and like you said, when something like this happens, of course, we were all working together in the very beginning because nobody could get in or out, but then some of that help that comes in, they go away, obviously, or they go to, unfortunately, another situation.
There's always disasters,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Which is tough. At the end of the day, we're we have our work, what we go to during the day, but we have our lives outside of work.
Right.
And when that gets impacted, that's very personal. So we don't put faces with the disaster that happened. And, we fortunately, our employees have 3 paid days off to volunteer. And so that allows us to be able to say, hey, would you be willing to come up to Asheville for the day? We'll have a bus available for you to come up. So you just need to show up at the bus and we'll bring you up. Help you volunteer somewhere, feed you, and then bring you back down. So that I think having the resources helps. It's being able to implement it appropriately just for our community. So lots of needs and a lot of support.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's great. Are there any, that's a huge initiative, anything that you guys have learned through this or adapted? Obviously you do have branches that are like down in Florida or, other locations that go through these type of things, but as far as like locally, have you changed anything to kind of adapt?
Yeah.
You don't want to go through this again. But
Yeah. To your point, because we are a larger organization, we have experience with natural disasters. Unfortunately, from a branch perspective, we have the capacity to be able to communicate with employees, and even just internally, we have something called the Truist One Team Fund. So if somebody's impacted by a disaster, as teammates, we can contribute to it, and the bank does. So when folks, after the disaster said, look, I've got a refrigerator and freezer full of food that's wiped out,
right.
or I had to stay in a hotel for a couple nights, teammates were able to apply to get reimbursed for that, which is a big deal. So for us, it was, being able to communicate what's available for our teammates. But at the same time, for folks who live in Western North Carolina, we're proud folks. We want to be able to, get through this on our own, but I think just being able to ask for help.
Right.
I think that was a big thing for a lot of folks, saying, look, I can't do this by myself. I need people to come beside me and along with me.
Yeah.
And those are, I think, some big takeaways for a lot of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's about those relationships too. You're helping your teammates, and like you said, like a lot of trying to navigate children, and if you don't have a warm shower or you don't feel yourself and you're trying to continue to go on, I think that's wonderful that you guys were able to kind of navigate through that.
And I think to your point, lessons learned, because just because maybe we felt like we were somewhat prepared, what are lessons as a community or as an individual we learned looking back, going through what we would call a crisis for this area? In my mind, I think of 3 things. One was, and you mentioned it, the power of relationships and community matters. We needed each other when the hurricane hit. We did. And we can do so much more together than we can do individually.
Right.
And I think the region's shown what's really possible when communities, small business, partners work together. And then secondly, the people is what makes an area great.
Right.
And I think that's what we really learned going through this, is that we've got great people, great leaders in the community, in the region, that care for and love Western North Carolina. This is their home. It's where the businesses are headquartered. This is where they raise their family or have raised their children, and they don't plan on going anywhere.
Right.
And so having great people, great leaders, that was really important during the recovery. And lastly, the third lesson I would say is Western North Carolina is really resilient. And we've heard that word a lot,
right.
Resilient.
Right.
It feels like the word of the year over the last year is resiliency. But I think a lot of the stories we've heard of individuals, business communities, businesses, it's just been unbelievable. And the grit and strength of our community, not just coming together, but rebuilding over the last year has been really encouraging.
Yeah, it really is encouraging to look, and it might not look exactly the same as it did before, but when you drive by something and they are rebuilding or there's something new there, it kind of gives you, it's like, a breath, you're like, okay, this is all going to be all right. Now there's some parts that still look, you said the branch in
East Asheville.
Yeah,
we're still working on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it'll get there, and I'm sure everybody's anxiously awaiting that to reopen, but that's just part of it. And so we're working together as a community. Is there any, like we had a lot of stuff going on, like through the chamber. I know we were kind of pushing out some information, some grants. Was there any way to like help with some of your business, like from a business standpoint? Like what did that look like?
Yeah, so from a business perspective, there were a lot of things we were able to do for our businesses. Part of it was for the Truist Cares program, but just being able to sit down with folks to understand where are they at right now, what was the impact, were there situations where we needed to defer payments on loans to give them time, or they were in an industry, let's say they were a tree cutting company, they were suddenly wide open,
right?
And they're like, look, we have more work than we can get to right now. We need some help to be able to purchase a truck, or be able to do this. So at the end of the day, having those one-on-one situations was important, and just conversations, and then understand where are people at now, what's it going to look like in 6 months, and just being able to get past that uncertainty. And so I think ultimately that's where relationships matter. And then ultimately being able to just say, how can we help? In a lot of cases, that was just not financial. It was like, we've got employees that are dealing with mental health, and emotionally, is there somebody that you can connect us to? So we were able to kind of connect, whether it was, to your point, grant programs the Chamber had, Mountain BizWorks had, the SBA had on the disaster loan program. A lot of it was just, what do we not know that we don't know?
Right.
And can you either help me or get me to somebody that can?
Right.
And so I think that's where relationships really made a big deal, and just showing empathy to folks' situation, because this wasn't something we expected.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it wasn't something like COVID where everybody was experiencing it. It was very obviously localized, and like you said, the SBA was here at the Chamber for months, to help support. And
recovery looks different for everyone.
It really
for
does.
some folks, it was all right, depending on where you lived. Maybe you didn't have flooding. And for other folks, they didn't have power for weeks. Other folks, power came on after a week. Other folks, they were on well water, so they had water suddenly. Right. Other folks, they didn't. And so, I think of the corner kitchen that's down in Biltmore Village. Biltmore Village is one of those areas that was just impacted dramatically by flooding. And 318 days is how long it took them to reopen. And that was the first independent restaurant in Biltmore Village. They were there on day one. And you're just like, 318 days, like, you've got to be a really strong-willed person and have a lot of resilience to just hang in there to get there.
Right.
But for other folks, they're not there yet. And that's okay. Just want them to feel like that they can be supported if they need the support. Yeah.
Right. Gosh, I know it's amazing to look back and see, like, it's hard to believe it's been a whole year.
And if you didn't live here or didn't go through it, it's hard for folks to understand that. I think even if they visit, I think a lot of folks felt like downtown was impacted. It really wasn't impacted outside of water and power.
Right.
But unless you've gone through a disaster or a crisis, it's hard to explain some of the emotions you went through. And that doesn't mean those emotions always go away too.
Right. Like hearing the helicopters, even like today. I heard one yesterday and I was like, oh, it's just because you heard the chainsaws, you heard all of that constantly, or somebody telling a story about, a tree falling on their roof. And
I heard a story yesterday where, the whole, all the flooding and the rain happening, Arboretum does an outdoor program in the summer in the woods, and they had to kind of change their curriculum about, hey, the woods are a safe place, because a lot of kids were like seeing woods destroyed in the flooding, and like, oh my goodness, like that's not what I'm thinking about it now.
Right.
So it's just it's different for everyone.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
It is. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us that Truist has going on? Or?
Yeah. So for your listeners and folks, watching, the main thing I can say is Truist is here to help. Mentioned our Truist Cares program earlier, 3-year, $725 million commitment to Western North Carolina. Our local branches, teammates, myself are available to discuss how that program can support you. Truist.com/Truist Cares is the best place to go. If you're a nonprofit company that needs volunteers, please reach out. We've got teammates ready to volunteer.
Yep.
So please reach out. We're just 1 year into 3 years. So we got another 2 years. We'd love to be happy to discuss how to make that a reality. And ultimately I leave your listeners with, recovery isn't just rebuilding, what we lost. It's about reimagining what's possible.
Right.
And so, we've been reminded over the last year how strong our communities are. Collaboration, support, shared determination is what we're seeing is what sets the foundation for long-term growth. So my encouragement to everyone, business, community members, is stay connected, look for ways to support one another, and use this moment to build something stronger, moving forward in the future. So, and that's what the Chamber's doing as well.
Yeah.
So thank you guys.
Well, thank you. And we appreciate your support through the Asheville Chamber. You guys are very involved with lots of different groups that we have with Venture Asheville and, just the Chamber in general.
It's great to talk to a Mars Hill grad.
Yeah.
We're all local, one way or another. So it's great we've both been here over 25 years, to just be able to, love the area and show love to the area that we've lived at and we've raised our families at. It's great.
Yeah. That's great. Well, thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate it so much.
Thank you.
And this was great information for our business community to hear about what you guys are doing out in the community, and it's just great.
Yeah, and Asheville's open for business.
That's right. Yeah. We are open for business.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, like, comment, and subscribe. To learn more about joining the Asheville Chamber, scan the QR code on your screen or visit ashevillechamber.org. Until next time!